All right, it is 6:30, so it's an exciting time to go ahead and begin talking about staying safe online. I welcome our participants to tonight's speaker series for us to talk about this very relevant topic, not just for your children, but also for you as family members. A couple of housekeeping things before we begin. First of all, you'll notice on your screen there is a Q&A feature. If you have any questions for the group, just go ahead and type those into the Q&A, and then at the end of the presentation, we'll be able to answer those questions for you. It is my pleasure to introduce tonight's panel. First of all, I should say I am Tara Sparks. I'm the Chief Academic Officer for the district, and we have three distinguished members of our technology department with you here tonight. We have our Executive Director of Technology, Dominic Jaggi. We have two of our technology specialists, Sandy Woodfin and Sonia Kesselring. And at this time, I am going to turn it over to them to lead the presentation.
All right. Let's see. Thank you, Dr. Sparks. Let's see. Are you going to put the presentation? There we go. All right, this is about staying safe online, and you're going to go to the next slide. So these are the things we're going to talk about tonight. First, we're going to go over student devices and expectations we have of students. Then we're going to talk about restrictions and filtering we have on devices and what parents can do to see the students' activities. And then steps that we take to make sure we're protecting your students' privacy using applications and online resources. Then we're going to talk about Google accounts, what restrictions and requirements we have in place, and how we protect your student accounts and what you can do to protect your account. And then phishing training that we have for our staff and things that you can do to look out for and spot phishing emails. And then we'll finish up with questions. Next slide. So starting last year, all of our students here at Lindbergh received a device. So even in this year, they have devices too. So even if the student doesn't bring the device home, when they come to school every day, there's a device specifically assigned to them. So our kindergartners through second grade, they all have iPads with a case on it, like you see on the screen. And then our third through eighth grade, they all have iPads with keyboard cases. And then our high school students all have touchscreen Chromebooks with a stylus. And then our fourth through 12th grade, all of those students take the devices home with them. You want to go to the next slide. So here's some of the expectations we have of our students. So we expect the students are ready to go for class every day. So this includes making sure the devices are charged. It's very difficult to charge devices at school with 20 kids in class and chargers going across the room. So we recommend that you have a spot at your house that you charge the device, and that way it becomes a habit to charge the device every night, and it's in a spot where they can see it, put it in their book bags, and make sure they bring it to school every day. The next thing is updating the device. We push out updates to all of the devices, except for some updates may require some user intervention. So students may have to click on some things to get the device to update. So updates are really important to make sure that all the software is working. So some software requires iOS updates. So if you see updates on the device, please make sure that they're clicking on the updates, installing those updates. Then the last thing on this page is repairs. We want to make sure that the devices always stay in working order. So it's really important that if the device is broken, has a chip on it, or any type of problem with the device, that you report the problem and we can get that repaired. These devices, we expect them to last 4 years, so we want to make sure that they're always we always have them in good working order. And then students need to make sure they're taking care of the device, because this device may have to go to another student. So we expect that we're going to use them for 4 years. So please make sure that we keep the device in a condition that you would want to have the device when you receive the device. Next slide. And as I said before, all of our students from 4th grade all the way through 12th grade take the devices home, and these devices can be expensive if they're accidentally damaged. So we offer insurance on the devices. We partnered with One-to-One's risk solution, so you can sign up for it at one-to-onerisk.com. The address is at the bottom of the screen. This is a yearly fee, $20 a year. So that $20 a year will cover the cost for anything that's accidentally damaged. So the first incident of accidental damage would be completely covered. You wouldn't have to pay any fees, any deductible for that. But then after that, if there was another one, you would have to pay a deductible. And we offer for free and reduced lunch that those get discounted in half. So it's 50% of the charge for people that are free and reduced lunch. And this only covers accidental damage. So if it's a manufacturer defect, we will automatically fix that. There's no charge for that. And then it also does not cover vandalism. So if there's some things that are purposely done to the device, that would be the full cost of the device. And the full cost of the device could be up to $300. So we highly recommend that if you haven't already done this, then register. If you have a 4th through 12th grade student, then please go to this website and register for this. All right, next slide.
I'd like to talk a little bit about what we are doing to keep your students safe online, both on campus as well as when they're at home. And I'd like to start by saying that there is no web filter that's going to filter out all inappropriate content, because new content is being added faster than any web filter can keep up. So we do recommend that you're still monitoring what your students are doing online. We're monitoring while they're at school, but we are also leveraging a web filter called Securely that works on all student devices, K through 12. And Securely filters out major categories of information. So pornography, drugs, gambling, explicit adult content. We're also filtering out chat messaging options, things that we can't monitor. Social media, and in this instance, social media means media that is, so like your news media on a social platform. We also block social networking for grades K through 5, and those are things like Instagram, Facebook, that sort of stuff. We block search engines that do not have a safe search feature, so that hopefully what they are getting is as safe as possible. We are blocking anything that includes hate speech on most gaming sites. Also for YouTube, we do use YouTube for a lot of educational things. Our teachers leverage it for a lot of different things in our classes. However, we are set to strict restricted mode. And what that means is if a video is not approved for all students, then it's not allowed to be viewed. However, our teachers can approve videos if for some reason YouTube has said, maybe this isn't, this should be restricted, and our teachers have vetted it, and then they make it available for students to view. In addition to the web filtering, we're also using classroom management tools for all students K through 12. For our iPads in grades K through 8, our teachers use Apple Classroom so they can monitor what students are doing on their devices. They can push out web links. They can lock the devices to a certain app if they're taking a test or something like that. And then for our high school students on their Chromebooks, we're using Securely Classroom. So it's an add-on to our current Securely web filtering. Another add-on that we're using with Securely is called Auditor, and that is real-time scanning of all email, Google Docs, Google Drive documents, and as well as Microsoft OneDrive for anything containing nudity, suicide information, violence, cyberbullying, and that's real-time scanning. So if something is caught by our auditor filters, it'll be sent, that information is sent to someone in the student's building. So those are usually the counselors and as well as the principal. They're notified saying that, this has been flagged, and then it's up to them to kind of vet that information and make sure that, maybe they need to talk to the student, call the parent, something like that. In addition to that, we also have Securely 24, and that is live human monitoring of our web filter and auditor for high risks of self-harm. So if there seems to be an instance where a student is in imminent danger, then a live human is going to call either whoever the emergency contact is for that student based on where they're at. And they also may even call the authorities if it's that high risk. So it's just another layer of monitoring for us. Next slide, Tony. And then at home, what you can do. So our web filter works the same, whether the student's at home or they're at school on their Limburg issued device. So as long as they're using their Limburg device, they're going to get the same level of web filtering that they would get at school at home. However, like I said before, no web filter is perfect. So we still recommend that you're monitoring your child's online activity when they're at home. In addition to that, there's an add-on feature for Securely for parents called Securely Home. You can sign up to get weekly online activity emails about what your student's been doing, as well as use the Securely Home app that will give you real-time activity for your child. And you can see a little snippet here of what it might look like if you logged into the app. Next slide.
All right, now we're going to switch over and talk a little bit about apps and extensions, and specifically how we make sure that student data is kept private and secure using the software that our students use for school, and then also some ways that you can make sure your data and your students' data is kept secure at home with apps and software. So we have iPads and Chromebooks that have apps and extensions on them. And we want to make sure that all that software that is being used is FERPA compliant. FERPA is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, federal regulation that defines how we should protect personal information for students. So we want to make sure that we're protecting student information to comply with FERPA regulations, and also just to protect our students' data, of course. Looking at apps and extensions, for FERPA compliance, we have a third-party tool. It's called Education Framework. On the right side of the screen is a little snapshot of a output from Education Framework looking at Dreambox. This software, it looks at privacy policies and terms and conditions for a large amount of software, apps, extensions, and sites, and provides a summary of whether or not they're FERPA compliant. So we run any software that students are using on their Chromebooks or their iPads through this checker to make sure that the software is FERPA compliant before we push it out to students and allow students to use it. Students who are on iPads use the Manager app, which is essentially their version of the App Store. There is no Apple App Store available to students. They have to get apps through the Manager app. And anything that gets put in the Manager app is first run through this data privacy checker to make sure that it's compliant. And then our instructional design coaches also look at the apps and the sites and extensions to make sure that they relate to curriculum as well. So the iPads have the Manager app, the Chromebooks, students sign into the Chromebook with their Chrome account, so they're automatically logged in. So anything that is an app or an extension for a Chromebook has to be on what we call our allowed list. And our allowed list is, again, run through using the same approval process to make sure that any of the apps and extensions on the Chromebook are FERPA compliant. Next slide, Tony. There's a screenshot of our public website. You can go to the technology portion of the public website and find this approved list of software that has gone through this process and is available to our students. So if you'd like to look and see what's available to students, you can go and check this out on our public website. This list is continuously updated, so it's very much a live work in progress as we go through curriculum cycles. Next slide, please. At home, there's a lot of ways you can evaluate software. Specifically tonight, I'm talking about data privacy for software. So I'm not talking about anything except how can you make sure that your family's data is safe with apps and software that you use at home. And I really do recommend, it sounds a little bit dry maybe, but I do recommend you check out privacy policies for software before your family uses it. I've listed off some of the things that you can look for to help you weed through all the verbiage, specifically what is going on with your data. So if you're signing into the software and you're providing data for the software in order to use it, or while using it, what is happening to your data? Is it being shared with third parties? Is it being used for what's called targeted advertising, which is advertising that is customized to you? Software is required to put age ratings in their privacy policy information. So if you're talking about a younger child, for example, under 13, and you want to decide if they're going to be allowed to use a certain type of software, you can check the privacy policy and see what their age rating is. If it's not recommended for under 13, that is required to be posted. Also, you want to know, is your data being stored securely if you have important data that you want to protect in the software? And then can you request that the data be deleted? A big mantra that we use a lot when we're evaluating apps is that free apps aren't really free. There's some way that the app maker is making money. And the question when you're evaluating software at home is, how are they making money? So what are they doing with my data that is allowing them to be able to operate? And is it something that I'm okay with my data being handled in that way? Next slide, please. I put an example of a little bit of two different types of software that you have probably heard of. Clever is a portal software that we use in district, and they have a wonderful privacy policy, which it sounds kind of funny to call it wonderful, but I actually enjoyed reading through the fine print when I was a kid and trying to figure out what was going on with fine print. So that's kind of neat to me. But anyways, Clever has in their policy, I pulled out a snippet, and it boils down to, there's still a lot of information here, but it boils down to Clever saying, if we were to sell our product to another company, we would give you an opportunity to opt out of having your data transferred to that other company who purchased our product. And then on the flip side, I put in a snippet from the Snap Incorporated privacy policy, which is Snapchat and Bitmoji. And they say, if we were to sell our product or it was acquired or otherwise handed off, your data would be transferred. So you can see the differences, not that one's better than the other, but just know if you go and read through these privacy policies, they're going to tell you whether or not they let you know, whether they allow you to delete. And in this case, for example, they allow you to opt out of having your data shared with somebody else. So just be aware that your data is being saved by these software companies and that they will post on their privacy policy how they handle it. Next slide, please.
All right. All of our students and staff here at Lindbergh have Google accounts. So there's a lot of services that are offered through Google. These accounts are used to access Google Workspace for Education and also as a single sign-on to access other software. We do have the ability to restrict and or turn on and off services through Google. So just to give you an example of that, our students in kindergarten through 8th grade, they can only email within Lindbergh schools. We don't allow them to send emails or receive emails outside of Lindbergh schools using their Lindbergh Google account. And then as Sandy was saying earlier, we have YouTube in a restricted mode. Along with securely, we have some restrictions through just Google. So it's in a restricted mode and they can only view it in so restricted videos are not allowed to be played unless they're approved by Lindbergh Teaching. Passwords for all of our students. So in our younger grades, we set the passwords because it would be difficult for them to remember those passwords. So we set the passwords for them, but when starting in 6th grade, a little bit after they start 6th grade, we're going to require them to change their password a couple weeks after starting 6th grade. And some of the recommendations we use for changing passwords is that they use a password phrase. So instead of using just a password, a single word password, something that you would find in a dictionary, we recommend a password phrase. So to give you an example, like Cardinals wouldn't be very hard for you to, for somebody to crack that password because it's just a dictionary word. They can run it against a dictionary and you could crack that password. But a password like Let's Go Cards, which is easy to remember, and it is way more difficult to crack. So we recommend using passwords like that. And then for all of our staff, since our staff has sensitive data in their accounts, all of our staff, we require two-step verification on every account. And two-step verification, what it typically means, and what's probably the most common, is a password is one step, and then the second step would be a phone. So you would tie your password or your account, and when you log in, it would send like a prompt to your phone and say, yes, this is me. So that way you have to have two pieces of information to get into your account. So even if someone were to be able to get access to your password, they wouldn't have access to your account. So we have that enabled on all of our staff accounts here. Next slide. This is some of the things that you can do at home. If you do use Google, I would suggest you go to myaccount.google.com and click on the security tab. The very first thing that's on here is to enable two-step verification. So if you use If you use Google, I would recommend that you go here, go to security and enable two-step verification on your account. So you'll need to have your phone with you and you could easily set up your two-step verification, especially if you use a password manager. Google is a password manager. So if you're using it as a password manager, which I'll talk about in just a couple minutes, I would definitely highly recommend that you turn this two-step verification on. The next thing on here is your devices. So along on this same screen, a little bit further down, you would click on your devices, and this will show you all the devices that you're currently logged into on your Google account. So you can see and make sure that the devices that you're logged into actually belong to you, and you can log out devices. It'll tell you the dates and times and last time that they've logged in. So if you see something recently that's not yours, then you definitely want to change your password. But on here, you can also log out devices, and they could be old devices of yours. You can make sure that they're logged out. Then the last thing on the screen is your password manager. I recommend a password manager. This is something that if you're going to multiple websites and you create an account, let's say your bank account, when you create that account, it's going to ask you for a password. And if you use the same password across multiple websites and someone gets a breach, then they would know your password. So what's nice about a password manager is that it can recommend a password for you, and it's a very difficult password. People wouldn't remember. It's not in a dictionary, and then Google remembers that for you. And you don't have to use Google either. There's other password managers out there, but if you do use Google, they offer one. So when you create an account, you could just say, you can just right click on the password field and it would suggest a password for you, and it'll fill it out, and then Google will remember that password. And then also on here, you can click on the password manager. And what's kind of cool about this, it does a password checkup. So if you are using it as a password manager, you can click on password manager and do password checkup. And when you click password checkup, what it does is it goes out and looks to see all the passwords that you have stored in Google for all your accounts. And it'll check to see if they've been involved in any breach anywhere. So if your email and password show up on a website somewhere where it's been involved in a breach, then it'll let you know that you need to change these passwords. So I highly recommend that you set that. And then also, again, highly recommend that if you are using the password manager, make sure you're using the two-step verification. Next slide.
All right, our final topic of how we're keeping everybody safe here at Lindbergh, and then I'll share some tips with you guys for home too, is to talk about phishing. The concept of phishing is someone impersonating either an organization or an individual to try to acquire something of value from you. Typically, it's via email, although we also see it via text. In Lindbergh, we have implemented a phishing training program for all of our employees and all the staff that work in Lindbergh. And we look at trying to teach people to be able to identify what is phishing and what is spam. And spam specifically is unsolicited advertising. So one is a scammer, if you will, and another is just advertising. So we're working on, in this phishing training program that we've implemented, having our staff be able to identify the difference between the two, and then alerting us in technology to any suspected phishing attempts so that we can stop them. We have our staff trained to send forward phishing attempts or suspected phishing attempts to our technology ticket software, where we have one or more sets of eyes looking at the attempt. And then if it is indeed phishing, we will block the sender or report the phishing attempt so that we can stop this from continuing and compromising any data that we might have or taking advantage of any of our employees. The training is for everyone. So SSD, our food services, anybody who has a Lindbergh email account, obviously our teachers and all of our staff are all every month participate in our training program. We have a monthly send out of a email scenario that is set up to look like an actual email phishing attempt. It comes from an external email address, and it looks like something that our employees might potentially be exposed to. On the right side of the screen, you can see our current, we just literally finished today this scenario with all of our staff here at Lindbergh. We sent out this, it looks like a DocuSign document. And what we're really working on with our employees is making sure everybody knows not to click on anything in an email that they receive that could be potentially suspicious. And if they do happen to click, not to provide any login credentials so that we can protect our data and our student data at Lindbergh. So this particular one, if they did happen to click on the review document, then they would actually come up to a training page where we're emphasizing learning, and this is not a test. There's no punishment. We want you to learn to identify what a phishing attempt looks like and to be more prepared in the future. Next slide, please. At home, when you're working with either your own email or like I said, your cell phone, and you happen to get a message, here's some things that you can look out for and some ways that you can identify phishing attempts better at home and hopefully avoid getting scammed. Phishing attempts usually are requesting some type of information such as a login. So be suspicious if you have a request that is asking you to sign into something. Also, changing your password is often something that's asked. Again, these are attempts to get into an account that you have access to. There might be either gift card requests or financial requests in a phishing attempt, and then any kind of questions asking for personal information, definitely be suspicious of. Phishing emails and text messages are typically trying to induce panic, maybe sounding threatening and creating a sense of urgency so that you're more likely to react quickly without stopping and thinking. Next slide, please. I have an example of a phishing email. This appears to come from PayPal. Probably many of you have seen something similar. If you look at the email message, we'll break it down a little bit so you know what to look out for. The easiest flag is the from address. This is not always the case that the from address is really suspicious, but if it is suspicious, that's a really quick red flag. If you look at the top red arrow in this screenshot of this PayPal quote unquote message, you can see it's coming from up.com, not PayPal. There's nothing about PayPal in that email address. So automatically, aha, okay, this is not from PayPal. Now, if you were to read on, you would notice the urgency that we're talking about, saying your account has been suspended, trying to create some panic here. And then there's a click option, which is very typical of phishing attempts, saying you need to go here and provide something. So in this particular case, it's saying update your information. Guess what? They're going to try to get your PayPal account from you. So instead of clicking, if you are not sure what to do, let's say you get something that's highly sophisticated and it's not really clear whether it's a phishing attempt and you're not sure, well, maybe I do need to update my PayPal account, then don't click on the email message, go directly to whatever it is. So if it's a organization that you do business with, go to their website, sign in. If it's somebody that you have a phone number for, give them a call directly. Don't use any of the information in the email. Use the information that you already know or can find outside of the email message so that you are able to verify, is this legitimate? So in this particular case, we would go to paypal.com and sign in there and check and see, oh, is there something going on with my account? No. Okay, great. Or you could call them and say, hey, I got this email message. It says that my account has been suspended. Is that true? So always go to the individual, go to the organization directly. Check the from address is a really quick flag. And if you're on a cell phone, it's typically a little bit difficult to see the from address, but usually you can hold your finger down over the from name in order to see what the address is. So if you can figure out a way to do that, that's a really good idea. And at this point, that's all we have for phishing. So we're ready for the next slide. All right, let's see if we have any questions.
We have a couple and I can answer first two. So there's a question about using securely on personal devices and without allowing students to log out. So securely works on Chromebooks as an extension. We can force extensions to our devices as well as our student accounts. So if your child were to log into their personal Chromebook with their Lindbergh account, securely is turned on and filtered. However, we can't force them to stay logged into their Lindbergh account. So on personal devices, if they're logged in with their Lindbergh account, yes, it will work, but we can't force that on for them. The other question is about YouTube restricted mode. And the same thing. So you're asking about YouTube on your child's personal device if they're logged in with their Lindbergh Schools account. It absolutely does work that same way. The The only caveat to that is that on our devices, we force them to log into their Limber account. So then the restriction is automatically turned on. On a personal device, we can't force them to log in. So they can go to YouTube, they can log in with a personal account, and then that restricted access is not turned on. But if they logged in with their Limber account, then it would be, but we can't force them to log in on their personal device with the Limber account.
We have some questions about password phrases versus passwords. So password phrases are slightly better than a password, just a single word. So if something that you find in a dictionary would be very easy to guess. And if you use a password phrase, especially if you put spaces in it, and you put exclamation marks or some type of other characters in it, it makes it a little more difficult. But a password manager is definitely the way to go. That would be the most secure thing, because a password manager can recommend a password for you, and it'll just be random characters. It'd be very difficult to crack that. So I definitely think a password manager is the way to go. And like I said, we're not recommended any password manager, and Google's not the only password manager. There's other ones out there. So, but that would be the way to go. Someone asked about emailing the students during the day. It's kind of difficult. We don't want to open up our students to, especially our younger students, opening up to be able to get emails from outside the district. And it would be very difficult to know who the parent is. So opening that up at that age is just very difficult for us. So that's not something that we're looking at doing right now. Someone's asking about the browsing history. People using their own personal devices, it's difficult to manage those, because if they do turn on incognito mode, that's something that we have, Google has disabled for our devices. So, and then we also, everything's filtered with our securely filters, and we have restrictions put on our devices too. So not only are we restricting them where they're filtered, we're also restricting where they can't put other extensions on there to bypass our filters. But kids are creative too, so they'll even come up with ways, and we always have to be looking at ways to make sure that they're not getting around our filters. So, but if you're using a personal computer, unless you go outside and you buy something similar to securely outside, you could hide what you're doing.
We'll give it just a minute to see if any other questions come in. And in that time, it's always a little awkward to fill the dead space. So we just want to thank you for being here and being a part of tonight's webinar. We do record these, and we'll be sharing it out in future e-notes so that you have it as something to reference if you have further questions.